What is up, everyone? It's David. Welcome back to Gem Mint MTG, where we talk about all things related to graded Magic the Gathering cards. Today is another episode of the Graded Magic Market Review, where we're going to be taking a look at real-world sales of graded cards in the marketplace. Without any further ado, let's get right into this. The first thing that we're going to touch on before we get started here is just how I calculate these multiples. If you haven't already checked out a couple videos called the Graded Multiplier Part 1 and 2, this is how I calculate the multiples for these cards. So you can see basically taking the selling price of the card and dividing it by the near mint average price for that card with an adjustment for the grading fee. So if a card was to sell for $150 and the raw price for a near mint card of that card was $80, $35 adjustment for the grading fee would put it at $115 all in. Divide one by the other, and that would be a 1.3 multiple. So basically a 30% premium for that card. Just wanted to touch on that real quick. And then also another quick thing, this is a chart of the expected ranges of values for graded cards. This was also in that graded multiplier video. Went a lot more in depth on this, but basically when you start getting into gem mint cards, you get higher multiples of cards. Most cards in the 9 range tend to sell for a premium of 10 to 25, 50%. Generally, you don't get a 2x multiple on a mint card. Once you get into gem mint cards, you get into those 2, 3, 4x multiples. All right, that's all I had for an introduction. Let's get right into these cards. Getting started off here with Lion's Eye Diamond from Mirage. So this PSA 9 sold for $745. Near mint, these are running about $550. Adjustment for the grading fee puts it at $585. That gives you a multiple of 1.27x, which is actually pretty strong for a PSA 9. Most PSA 9s are more in the 10 to 20% premium range. So once you start getting over 25% into that 25 to 50% range, it's actually a pretty nice premium for a PSA 9 or a BGS 9. Lion's Eye Diamond is a hot card, reserve list card from Mirage. Very strong card in Commander and other legacy and vintage formats. So not surprised to see this card commanding a strong premium. Moving on to Aladdin's Lamp from Arabian Nights. So this BGS 9 sold for $222.50. Near mint, these are actually running about $140. They're very hard to find in really good condition. It's hard to find cards like this that are truly in grade-worthy condition. But near mint, they're running about $140 with an adjustment for the grading fee. That gives it about the same multiple as the Lion's Eye Diamond at 1.27. So another good premium for grade 9 mint card. Moving on to Fire Elemental from Beta. So this now we're moving into some gem mint cards. So this Fire Elemental from Beta sold for $500. These are running about it really depends on where you check. This is another one. These alpha and beta cards especially are really hard to find grade worthy near mint copies in general. There were none available on Card Kingdom. The availability on TCG Player was very low. Were some available on eBay, but running you about $92.50 when you average out what is available. Adjust that for the grading fee, puts you at $127. That gives you just under a 4x multiple at 3.92. I think that even commons and uncommons from beta are starting to get appreciated more and more, and getting a 4x multiple, almost a 4x multiple on a 9.5 is very good. And at only a $500 price point, I think cards like this are a really good way to get into vintage Magic graded cards. You know, I think the future is very, very strong for cards like this. I think that the floor on something like this is very high. I think it still has room to grow as people realize just how hard it is to find these. Just try yourself. Go ahead and try to find a really nice near mint raw copy of any beta, uncommon, and rare. It's very hard to find. Not surprised to see a strong multiple on a card like this. Moving on to Eladamri, the Lord of the Leaves. So this is a CGC 9.5. This is a card that I was actually looking at as I really like this card. I decided, and decided not to get it because if you saw my last video about what I'm grading, I'm actually grading 2 of these in my latest BGS order. So despite me loving the card and wanting this card, somebody else got it. I decided to pass on it, but it sold for $200. Near mint, they're about 80 bucks. Your multiple's 1.72. So a couple things here. It's a CGC graded card, which, as we all know, it just doesn't command the same kind of premium as a BGS 9.5 or a PSA 10 or something like that. It's just not there. Will it be one day? Probably. I think CGC is a pretty good company. Their grading seems to be pretty consistent. It's just a lot of people only collect BGS or they only collect PSA. And so cards like this, you know, this is a Tempest block rare. This isn't, you know, a super iconic sought after card or anything. I personally like the card a lot and I think it has a good future. But, you know, a Tempest, it is a reserve list card, but a card like this, CGC graded, not a crazy multiple on this one. Not too surprised about that either. Moving on to Air Elemental from Beta. So here's another Beta Elemental in BGS 9.5 condition. This one sold for this whole card is very, very similar to the Fire Elemental. As you would expect, another basic 9.5. This sold for $474. The Fire Elemental sold for $500. They're both uncommons from Beta, so pretty consistent here. Near mint average, once again, around 90 bucks, and your multiple's about 3.79. So when you look at the Air Elemental and the Fire Elemental, both of these were pretty consistent in terms of what near mint copies run for, what the selling price for the 9.5 was, and what the multiple overall was. So pretty consistent pricing here in these two Beta Elementals. So moving on, now we're going to move into PSA 10s. There is a ton of PSA 10 activity on the market. There was a lot of sales. I'm really excited to get into this. This is a good time to tell you, if you're not already a subscriber here and you enjoy content like this, I would really appreciate your subscription. I'm trying to grow this channel on YouTube because there's not a lot of people talking about graded cards on a regular basis here on YouTube, and I'm trying to change that, and I would love for you to be a part of it. So please hit that subscribe button. Join in the fun. I'm going to be talking about graded cards all the time here on Gem Mint MTG. All right, let's get into these PSA 10s, starting off here with Mountain from Arabian Nights. This Mountain sold for $916. Now, these on average are well over $300 now. Once again, if you can find a raw, grade-worthy Mountain from Arabian Nights that hasn't been played with. People love to play with this card. People like to have all their decks filled out with Arabian Nights Mountains. So adjust for the grading fee puts you at 3.7. It's a multiple of 2.47. So for a PSA 10, you know, it's right in the range of what you would expect. That 2, 3, you know, top end is around 4x. So it's in the range. It's on kind of the lower end of the range, but I'm not too surprised. I mean, in reality, it is just a Mountain. You know, it's not one of the more iconic Arabian Nights cards like the cards that we're going to look at a little bit later here. But yeah, a good strong multiple for, I mean, for a basic land. This is a $900 Mountain, no matter how you cut it. Moving on to, so this is an interesting one. I really thought this was an interesting one, and I wanted to talk about it. So this is a Fire Elemental from Revised. Yes, you heard that right, from Revised. So we talked about that Beta PSA 10 that sold for $500. This Revised PSA 10 sold for $110. Now, near mint, these are more or less bulk. These are just 25 cents. Anybody can buy this card. Adjust for the grading fee, puts you at just over $35. And that multiple is 3.12. So this is another one where, you know, I think that people are starting to realize just how sought after even cards like this are. People like collecting high grade cards, even if they're not necessarily reserve list or really iconic cards, you know, or even rares, you know, even uncommons like this. This card is not a rare, it's an uncommon. And I personally, I think it's great because there's a lot of people who maybe can't afford a PSA 10 Beta Fire Elemental. And there's a market for people who can afford a card like this. And I think it's great. It gives everybody, something that they can afford, something to go after, cards that they can grade themselves. If you happen to find really, really nice, pristine, cards like this, even from Revised or Unlimited or whatever, and you get them graded and you can 3x your money, it's cool. Like it's everything that, that the high-end collecting is, just on a lower scale. And even though some people could look at this and say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. Who would want a revised? Who would want to grade a revised uncommon?" Well, you know what? Somebody did, and somebody did really well on it. And I hope that the person who bought their card really enjoys it. I think it's a cool card in a really high grade. Awesome artwork. So it's just a neat card, something that I wanted to touch on. Moving on to Gate to Phyrexia. And here we're going to start getting into more some Antiquities, Arabian Nights. There's a lot of PSA 10s that got sold this month. Pretty wild here. So Antiquities PSA 10 Gate to Phyrexia. This sold for $494. Near mint, they're running at about $130. I hadn't checked this card in a while because I had picked a couple of these up in like the $50, $60 range, and I thought they were around $70, $80, something like that. And no, they're not. The ones that you can, once again, the ones that you can actually find that are in really nice condition, those are running well over $100, more like a $130. So that puts this one at a 3x multiple. And these first expansions for Magic, the Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, these cards are really starting to pick up. People are starting to realize just how low these print runs were. People are realizing how hard it is to find these cards in grade-worthy condition that are still raw. And the ones that are being sold that are already graded are having really good sales, really high prices, good multiples. I mean, this is a card that for not that long ago was a $20, $30 card. And now selling one of these for $500 seems crazy, but it's not anymore. It's really not. Moving on to another card that we already went over today. So we talked about that basic 9 Aladdin's lamp from Arabian Nights that sold for $222. So this PSA 10 sold for $515 for an Aladdin's lamp. This card is unplayable. This card is so ridiculous. But yeah, this card sold for $515. The near mint average on these is about $140. I'll say it one more time. It's hard to find these in truly near mint condition. A lot of the ones that are even listed as near mint aren't. They're lightly played. They're horribly centered. They have surface issues. I'm telling you, it is not easy to find these. So I'm not at all surprised to see a PSA 10 sell for well over $500. It's an iconic card. Mark Teaton artwork. I absolutely love Mark Teaton. And yeah, a good strong multiple, almost a 3x multiple on this Arabian Nights PSA 10 Aladdin's lamp. More Arabian Nights cards here. Aladdin's Ring. This one sold for $719. Near mint average, these are about $143. That puts this with an adjustment for the grading fee. 4x multiple on this PSA 10 Arabian Nights Aladdin's Ring. Crazy. These Arabian Nights rares are starting to get really pricey, even the ones that are completely unplayable. Remember, this is not a Juzam Djinn. This is not a Surrender Befreet. This is not an If Bifafreet, something that, might see play somewhere. This is, for all intents and purposes, an unplayable card that has only value in terms of its collectability. And seeing an Aladdin's Ring sell for $719 is just crazy. It's just crazy. But I mean, I understand it. If you are into collecting Arabian Nights and you want the high, the really high grade stuff, there's just not a lot available, both on the graded market as well as the raw side. These things don't come up very often. The raw cards that you can buy are usually not near mint. And so to see 4x multiples and $700 Aladdin's Ring, it really doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me. Moving on to another Arabian Nights PSA 10. The Sandals of Abdallah. So this PSA 10 sold for $570 for Sandals of Abdallah. Near mint, once again, these are over $100. Multiple of 3.45, another strong multiple. A lot of these, you can see these PSA 10 Arabian Nights cards that are not really even playable are all selling for 3.5, 4x multiples. And you know, I'm not surprised. Once again, I'm not going to say everything that I just said again, but it's an interesting card. Dan Frazier artwork, Arabian Nights, the first expansion, PSA 10. Just not a lot of these available anymore. Moving on, so we're going to look at this card in two grades, PSA 10, and then we're going to look at a BGS 9.5. But this is Old Man of the Sea, Old Man Rudy coming out here for an appearance. This Old Man of the Sea sold for $2,079. Incredible. Near mint, these are around $600. This is another one that is extremely hard to find in truly unplayed pack fresh condition. Good luck. I happen to have one of these that I use for decks. It's very well played, well loved. I got it for like $70 a few years ago. Gosh, these are just not hard to. These are just hard to find. 3.4x multiple, once again in that 234 range. Not surprised to see this card sell well over $2,000. It's an extremely popular card, and when somebody publicly announces that they have hundreds of copies of a card on an expansion like Arabian Nights, that is a significant portion of the market that one person holds, in my opinion. I personally believe that. If you look at how many of these are available on the open market, it's not like there are hundreds or thousands of these available. I mean, the actual population of just raw copies that are available to purchase, let alone the condition that they're in, is very low. And so when somebody has hundreds of copies of one card, and in an expansion like this, that can significantly affect the value. In my opinion, I do think that that there are certain cards that certain people have a lot of copies of, that over the years it has affected the availability of that card and therefore the price of that card. So I'm not too surprised to see that Old Man of the Sea is selling for over $600. And to have a PSA 10 sell for over $2,000, it falls in the range of what you would expect. It really does. Moving on, so this is the the Beckett 9.5 Old Man of the Sea. So you can see very similar here, and once again, in general, PSA 10s tend to sell for a little bit more than the equivalent BGS 9.5. They're both gem mint, but PSA 10s just tend to sell a little higher, but there does tend to be a little bit more volatility. But you can see here the BGS 9.5 equivalent. It's not a quad, but it is a basic plus. It has 10 centering, which is awesome for an Arabian Nights card. This card is absolutely beautiful. I personally think that this copy presents better than the PSA 10 that sold, but I mean, they're both beautiful cards. So this basic 9.5 plus sold for $1,920 as opposed to the $2,079 for the PSA 10. So not uncommon for a PSA 10 to sell a little bit more than the equivalent BGS 9.5. But I thought that was interesting to take a look at both of those cards that recently sold in two different grades. Moving on to Diamond Valley, more Arabian Nights PSA 10s. Like I told you, somebody unloaded their PSA 10 Arabian Nights collection, and people were eager to get in on it. Now, this card, Diamond Valley from Arabian Nights. So, this card sold for $2,179. Now, where things get interesting here is the near mint average and the multiple. I'm going to be honest with you. This is one very, very hard to find near mint copies available that are truly in near mint condition. So the multiple on this one looks lower, but I think that is a symptom of just the availability of this card being very low. I think that if and when more copies of this become available on the market, the near mint average on this will drop. I remember I got one of these for $400, like not that long ago, like within the last year or so. So to see near mint copies selling for $1,250, I think there might be more coming onto the market. Maybe not. I could be wrong, but I mean, this is catching up to Library of Alexandria. Like, how crazy is that? Like, don't get me wrong. I love Diamond Valley. I think it's an awesome card. And I'm not too surprised to see it selling for to over $2,000 in PSA 10 condition. But I am surprised that near mint copies are, well over $1,000, more around $1,250. I wouldn't be surprised for this card to retrace a little bit as more come onto the market. We'll have to wait and see. It could very well be that this is just a new floor for the card and it's only going to go up from here. Nobody knows, but I am a little surprised to see just how high the near mint prices for these are at this point. Moving on back to antiquities. So Sushi, Christopher Rush artwork, reserve list card, absolutely awesome. Sold for over $500 at $534. Near mint, these are running about $130 with an adjustment for the grading fee, puts you at $165, multiple 3.23. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Awesome card, awesome artwork. Falls in the range of what you would expect for a PSA 10. Not too much to say here other than good to see cards like this moving a little bit and seeing what they're selling for. Now this next one, so I think that this is a good example of why you have to be careful about what kind of cards you are investing in. Just because a card is a vintage Magic the Gathering card doesn't mean that it's a good investment. I think this Mana Crypt, so this is a Mana Crypt, the book promo, the Harper Prism, I believe it was, included this Mana Crypt as a promotion for a publication that they were selling. So these came with the magazine, sealed in a package. Many of these were made. So this PSA 10 sold for $766. Near mint, these are running about $375. So when you adjust for the grading fee, it's a pretty low multiple for a PSA 10, 1.87. Why is that? We'll take a look at this screenshot that I threw in there. This is on Card Kingdom. There are 20 near mint copies. And look at all of the copies that they have are in near mint condition. Why? Because the card came sold, because the card was not usable in any format for a long time, because the card, it's just, I think that the way that this card was made, with the print run, with the fact that it came sealed, the fact that it was unplayable for most of its life, there's just a lot of these available, and most of them are in near mint condition. So it does not surprise me at all that this card did not sell for a high multiple. At $766, it was a 1.87 multiple, not a strong multiple. And I personally, I would stay away from cards like this. I would not purchase cards like the Mana Crypt book promo in extremely high grade and expect them to appreciate in value considerably over the years. I just don't see it happening. Moving on back to Arabian Nights, we got more Arabian Nights coming up here. So Singing Tree, this is another one where I wanted to stop and go through a little bit more detail on this card and what's available on the market. So you look at this Singing Tree. This Singing Tree sold for almost $2,000. Now, the near mint average on this, I have it at $600. Okay, when you adjust for the grading fee, that puts it at a multiple of 3, just over 3. Now, that near mint average, I included a couple screenshots here because I want you to take a look at the disparity between what's available on Card Kingdom, what's available on TCG Player. There are also some listings on eBay, but you can see when Card Kingdom had Singing Tree in stock in near mint condition, it was $329. A lot of times when Card Kingdom sells out of a card in near mint condition, the prices on TCG Player will go up considerably. In the case of Singing Tree, it doubled. These Singing Trees, I blocked out the names, but the near mint copies of Singing Tree that are available on TCG Player are well over $600, $600, $700, $800 for this card. I think that is way overpriced. I would not buy this card for $800 in near mint condition, and I would wait until more come on the market. Is this a new price floor for this card? And if it gets restocked at Card Kingdom, are they going to put it up for $600-$700? Maybe, but personally, that's not a risk that I would take, and not one that I would recommend for anybody watching this. I think that cards like this, especially, you got to watch out for stuff like this. I'd be very hesitant to spend $600, $700, $800 on a Singing Tree raw. Is a PSA 10 worth $2,000? Maybe. I get, if you're collecting Arabian Nights or you love this card or whatever, then, maybe this is the card for you. Myself personally, if I had $2,000 to spend on a Magic the Gathering card, I would not buy a PSA 10 Singing Tree from Arabian Nights. That's all I'm going to say about this. There, everybody's going to have their own opinion on, especially on cards like this, where there's a huge disparity in the raw prices, and there's an extremely high selling price on the PSA 10. That's just how I see this card in this sale personally. Moving on to Khabal Ghoul from Arabian Nights. So this card, another, kind of relatively low multiple on this one, $704 selling price. Near mint, these are running about $300. Crazy. I swear I was just looking at this card and they were like $100. I don't know when all this happened. But adjust for the grading fee and puts you at a 2.1 multiple. Yeah, and cards like this are the reason why I'm very wary of cards like Singing Tree. Okay. Should Khabal Ghoul be selling for such a different price and equal PSA 10 condition than Singing Tree, or than Sushi, or even like the other Arabian Nights rares that we were looking at? I mean, I don't know. That's why cards like Singing Tree, I would be very wary of stuff like that. The Khabal Ghoul, $700 for a Khabal Ghoul. That's a lot of money. But I think that this is more in line with what I would want to pay for, a card from Arabian Nights in PSA 10 condition. That's not an iconic card. Or I'm sorry, that's not like one of the iconic cards from the set, like a Juzam Djinn or a Library of Alexandria or a Serendib Ifrit or something like that. Those like really heavy hitter cards that are extremely popular to play with and that are really iconic. Those are the cards that I think are going to command those, that justifiably command those extremely high prices and the high multiples. Seeing a Khabal Ghoul in PSA 10 conditions sell like this, I think this is in line with something that I would be more comfortable purchasing, as opposed to something like that Singing Tree for almost 3 times as much as this card. Okay, and that brings us to our last card. So here we go. This is the Juzam Djinn. We've talked about it a couple times, reference this card since we've been talking about Arabian Nights a lot. But a PSA 10 came up for sale, and it sold for $7,804. Near mint, these are running about $27.50. Again, an extremely popular card to play with. But the near mint copies that are available are around $27.50. So when you adjust for the grading fee, that gives you a multiple of 2.8x. Again, around that 2.5, 3x range, exactly what you would expect for a PSA 10 card. Especially, I've talked about this before, but when you get into the higher, absolute value of the card, this is almost a $3,000 raw card to purchase. Generally, the multiples don't get really crazy on cards like that. A lot of times, cards that are in just a lower overall price point can sometimes generate those really crazy multiples, just because the overall amount that you're spending is less. But this is exactly what you would expect, a multiple of 2.8. But yeah, over $7,800 for Juzam Djinn from Arabian Nights. Mark Tenen artwork, reserve list, one of the, if not the most, between this and the Library of Alexandria, I would say that these are the two most iconic cards from Arabian Nights. And we looked at a lot of cards from Arabian Nights today, and I think that this was a great way to end the video. This card is absolutely awesome. I'm really happy for the person that bought this. I hope that they really treasure this as part of their collection. This, to me, is truly a piece of Magic history that this person will hopefully own for a long time and really enjoy. So that's the last card I wanted to look at today. A lot of Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Beta, a lot of vintage Magic in this episode, but there was just a ton of sales this month, and I was really excited to go over these with you and bring you this content. Let's wrap this video up. All right, that's the video for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate having you here. If you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, join in the fun. I am going to be talking about graded cards all the time here on Gem MTG, and I'm really looking forward to doing more market review videos. There's just really not a lot of people talking about stuff like this on YouTube, and it's something that I truly enjoy doing, and I'm really happy to share it with all of you. A lot of activity on the market this last month. I'm going to continue to do these monthly for the entire year of 2022. This is the second installment. There will be another one coming at the end of March, so stay tuned for that. And then I've also got videos coming up on graded cards that I've bought and sold in the marketplace recently, and other stuff in the graded marketplace as well. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.